Hey folks, hope you're all doing well and welcome to episode 37 of Recommend an Album to Review. So briefly before we get into it, the way this show works is every Thursday at 7 p.m. I put up a video of an album that was recommended to review, and you folks are kind enough in the comments to recommend some records for the following week. The criteria is simple: one album, a single album, I should say, an album that I haven't already talked about on the channel, and that's really all the criteria. So here we go. So for this week, I kind of broke the rules a little bit because I always say one album that I can digest in a week. Well, I got a very long request, very detailed, about reviewing this particular record. And this is a double record, which, again, I don't normally do. And please do not send double records, because especially albums of this sort, because they're literally a mouthful. But anyway, so the record for this week is a double album, and it's by a band, I should say, called Cardiacs, and the record is called Sing to God. So I mentioned a mouthful. This is like listening to these guys is like having a 24-course dinner. I mean, there's so much going on in these tracks. Well, before I get into it, let's go through the personnel. So the band consists of Bob Leith on drums and vocals, Jim Smith on bass and vocals, Tim Smith guitars, keyboards, and vocals, and he is the general songwriter here. And then you have John Poole, guitars, keyboards, and vocals, and then there's just all kinds of special guests, because there's extra vocals on this, violin, somebody plays the scissors, there's trumpets, there's string quartet. There's a lot going on in this record. It's a very busy record. There is a lot going on. If you were to label this, you could label it art rock. There's pop elements at times. Every sort of song idea is like stretched out to the umpteenth degree, where like you literally can't do anything more with a particular song. There's very few songs that follow what we would call the typical song structure, verse chorus, bridge, that sort of thing. There's a few that almost fit that criteria, but a lot of them are kind of just parts and then more parts and then more parts, which sometimes it's a good musical experience. Sometimes it kind of loses the thread for me a little bit. But it's a very busy record. There's prog in there a lot. There's the closest band that I could that I could compare these with, because they have the pop sensibility and then a very proggy and a lot of changes, is maybe Sparks, but a little more frenetic version than Sparks, with even more parts added to it. But that's kind of how I would describe it. There are a lot of tracks on this record. There's 22 tracks on this, and but anyways, so what I'll do is, instead of going through all 22 tracks, because that's a lot, I'm just going to highlight the songs that I personally liked, and generally the songs that I liked are the ones that are a little bit more stripped down. I won't say conventional, because there's nothing in this record that's conventional, but just sort of the songs that I enjoyed the most. So here we go. The first track I'm going to highlight is a song called Dog Like Sparky. This one sounds, again, I mentioned the comparison to Sparks. This really has, to me, a Spark vibe. Tim Smith, who I believe is the lead singer on most of this, is got that sort of high register voice. This one actually is a little bit conventional, because at least it kind of returns to the theme, and it's more or less musical all throughout. I mean, it's sort of like very twisted. It's like a twisted pop, it's like you know, and even if you look at the album cover, these guys kind of look a little bit crazy, and it's like crazy twisted pop, you know, kind of morphed. The musicianship, and it's incredible. There's no limit to the amount of ideas because, like I say, they take like a central theme and just kind of expand it into every possible direction. And but this one is a little bit conventional in the sense that it does return to a theme, and you know, not a bad song. Dog like Sparky. All right, the next one I'm going to mention is Fiery Gun Hand. Um, this one is very, very fast, very up tempo. Again, a lot of stuff going on, but the highlight of this song is there's this crazy guitar solo that goes on in this song. It's frenetic, it's intense, um, but it's really, really cool, and that for me, being a guitar player, that's kind of the highlight of this song. So, if nothing else, the guitar solo alone is sort of, you know, it makes a standout track on this record. So there you go. Next one I'll mention is Belly Eye. That's a pretty good track. It's got some really cool melodic moments and some nice musical passages that I actually like. Again, it's crazy. I mean, there's so many extraneous things going on. I should mention too, these guys are really good at sort of creating soundscapes for each song. So, but you know, Belly Eye is yeah, it's got some pretty good musical moments on it that I do enjoy. And they got Manhoo, Manhoo. This one has got some really nice melodies and some really nice musical moments to it, and it's probably one of the more conventional sounding songs in terms of it's like kind of a little more stripped down. But that's an entertaining song, Manhoo. Even it's got a lot going on, but it's, you know, it's still sort of kind of, you can follow it, right? So it's one of the more straightforward songs. Not that anything on this is straightforward, but it is closer to straightforward than some of the others. Then you got Dirty Boy. Now this is 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes long. If it was 4 minutes, it would be great. It's one of the heavier songs on here. It sounds like Brit pop, you know, with heavy guitars. It's a good song. It's catchy. It's got some really nice moments to it, but it kind of dies because it just goes way too long. If this was sort of condensed to a 4 minute song, again, something more conventional, I would probably like it a lot more because there's some really good potential in this song. But there you go, Dirty Boy. And you have Odd Even. Now that's got some acoustic guitars to it. It's got a nice, you know, these guys, they all, for me anyway, they sound very British, and it's got that kind of British pop sensibility. But Odd Even is a pretty good song. Again, very busy, but it's only at 3 minutes, so it's, you know, it kind of stays in one lane for the most part. But it's a pretty good track. Flap Off You Beak. This is pretty cool. I like this one. It's up tempo, but it's got some nice changes in it. Um, it's a pretty good track. Again, it's, you know, less than 4 minutes, so it's just right. You know, it's got, again, all experimentation like all the other songs, but it never loses the thread of the song. And yeah, it's one of the better ones on here for sure. So Flap Off You Beak. Yeah, so those are the highlights for me out of the 22 songs that are on here. So, um, this is a pretty crazy record. It's like the principal songwriter, I believe, is also Tim Smith, but don't quote me on that. But it just seems like they've had a lot of ideas, and some are good, some are not so good. And sometimes the good ideas where a song will start and sound kind of cool sometimes goes into a direction that is not quite as musical and hooky. Sometimes it's sort of stays kind of musical and hooky, or at least follows the thread of the song. Um, so it's like they've got all these ideas and they just keep packing them in and packing them in and packing them in, and some of them work for me as a listener, and some of them don't. I pointed out the songs that more or less worked for me, in the sense that they followed a thread. They had a nice melodic idea, and they built on that, and they kind of returned to the main theme. So I guess for lack of a better term, the songs that I preferred were the ones that were maybe a little more pedestrian in that regard. Maybe not quite as complex. I mean, there's um, no question that the arrangements are incredibly diverse and intense and you know uh, wide in their scope. The musicianship is top notch. The vocals, it's got that high voice, but it kind of works. And then there's some female vocals that come in at times to support, and there's other voices that come in. It's very well orchestrated in that regard. I don't know how these guys can keep track of learning one song and knowing that this part comes in here. I mean, there's a part that'll slide in for a couple of bars and then disappear, and you'll never hear that part again. I mean, it's really complex stuff. So I'm Prague. That's why I mentioned Prague. Odd time meters for certain sections and all that kind of thing. When you're listening to this, it's like you're being bombarded. That's the best way to describe it. Just musically bombarded. And some pieces you'll latch onto, and other pieces you won't. It's that kind of thing. It's definitely not for everybody. Let's leave it at that. But I understand these Cardiacs had a cult following. I understand that also Tim Smith has passed away and the band is no longer. But I understand they had a cult following, and I can see that. I can see people getting into this kind of stuff. Um, if I was to rate this album out of 5, I would probably, just because out of 22 songs, I don't think I even named half of them. I would probably give it maybe a 2.5. This isn't really my bag. Not because it's complex and or proggy. I mean, I do like that stuff. There's a lot of prog bands that I dig and I've talked about before. It's just that some of their departures are just really not musical and just kind of wear on you a little bit. And they'll start with a great idea, and then I don't really like where they're going with it. Some of the extensions are not super musical for me, and it kind of loses a thread a little bit. And so for that reason, I mean, you may like this. It's just my personal opinion, but it's not something that I would go back to. But it's interesting. It's interesting, and if you want to, definitely, if you want to go on a musical journey, you'll visit about 30 places in one song. So there you go. So anyways, if you're new to the channel, please consider liking, subscribing. Please check out the links to help support the channel. And yeah, if you've got an album, a single album that you'd like for me to review for next Thursday, please throw that in the comments. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the subscriber that recommended this. I understand you're very passionate about this band, and thank you for the long, detailed explanation as to why. I appreciate that. Appreciate your effort. But yeah, so yeah, we'll catch you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Have a great rest of your week. Take care. Cheers.